Okay, I think we are recording. Uh, so, hi, Angel. It's great to meet you. Thank you for being here today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good so far. You?
Pretty good myself. Uh, so, just to remind you before we actually get into the questions, this interview series is sort of geared towards helping people from, non-target schools and uh, more minority-based backgrounds from understanding how they can sort of stand out in the recruiting process. Um, and that's just sort of where the questions are going to be coming from. Um, and with that, I think we're ready to jump into the first question, right?
Sweet. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so the first thing I think everybody wants to know is what did your career journey sort of look like? Like, how did you end up at Google? Where did you start? What was that sort of process look like to you?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start off with beginning of college, where I started off having known nothing about programming, besides like one class I took in high school about basic, and so everything was really new to me, and so I spent a lot of time that first year, freshman year, just focusing on like learning. And along with that, I also participated in like the Arizona Hackathon, Hack Arizona, and that was like a really nice, like eye-opening experience of being able to, first off, of course, get experience in trying to do a project. We really failed at that, of course, since it was literally our very first year. But it was a great experience to like actually like interact with some other people, sort of learn what possibilities were out there in terms of computer science, and overall just sort of get a general vibe of how development and stuff like that works. And so then come sophomore year, I was like, okay, it's time to actually start looking for an internship. And so I started putting together my resume and stuff. And then also I went to the career fair for, to just see what jobs were out there. And went ahead, talked with a few of the people, had some interviews, hit it off with State Farm really well. And that ended up leading to an internship the following summer, which was friggin' awesome because not that many people or not that many employers really recruit less than or people lower than juniors, which sucks. Besides, like the main people like Microsoft and Google having their freshman and sophomore orientated internship programs. So I felt like extremely lucky when I got that. And I went in and I ended up working on some front end like web development stuff, working on a new user interface for some database management stuff. And having done nothing with front end stuff, it was a really neat experience where, as a first professional real world job, you really got to sort of see like the Scrum workflow and sort of how sprints are laid out and all the different tasks on the task boards and everything like that. It really helped me get a really early start in terms of learning about the professional world. And so thankfully that internship went really well. And then we did have the opportunity to go ahead and essentially reapply again for like the next summer to work there again. But for me, I really wanted to try out a bunch of different companies before I actually got a real job because like for me at least getting to experience those different environments and those different environments was such an important aspect that I felt like was really needed so I could know sort of like what I would like, what I would dislike, what terms and topics would be better for me. And so junior year came around, and at this point I had done both like the freshman and the sophomore year hackathon, and then as well as that I took CSC 335 that spring semester of sophomore year. And so I was able to put that final project on my resume as well, and able to show something off besides just the hackathon stuff, which was really freaking cool. And so junior year came around, I went to the career fairs again, and then I ended up talking with Sandia National Labs, and they're an amazing company. They're like a defense government company, I guess. And so I talked with them, had a few interviews. It was mainly just phone based, and then I got that internship. But what happened was, while I was working on dealing with the background check stuff, I ended up actually failing that due to, in one of the boxes, it was like, hey, have you smoked marijuana in the last year? And I was like, yes, one time, like a couple months ago. And so, because I wanted to be like honest with them and yeah, just be open. And so that was actually what ended up making me lose that internship. And so by that point, it was actually like spring semester of junior year. And, usually a lot of the internships are already filled, all the positions. And so it was a big hassle for me to go around really trying to find like ways to potentially get something to do. And so in the end, thankfully, my uncle's friend worked for this place called MP Photonics over at the UofA Tech Park, I believe it's called. And she was able to find a little opening thing for me to do for during the summer. And it was only 20 hours a week. And it wasn't anything glamorous or anything, but it was something. And so come that summer, I was literally placed in like this small little server room. My chair was like a computer case. I was working on like this old computer and working on pretty much getting some automation stuff for them worked out, where currently they had still done like timesheet stuff on paper and all that. And it was a hassle for them to collect everyone's stuff, organize all that data onto an Excel sheet, and do things like that. So that internship really proved some interesting challenges, because like one thing is like I was talking, since it was such a small company, I was talking with like the CFO, I believe, to figure out what was needed. And so she wanted to be able to like adjust it as needed herself. So she didn't know any programming. So I ended up using this thing called Microsoft Flow, where it's essentially a drag and drop, like almost like Scratch in a way, where you can just sort of create a flow of things to do. And so in the end, that was definitely not the way to do it. And it ended up being pretty terrible. And I believe they ended up actually ditching that and actually contracting a company to make one for them, which in my opinion was probably the way they should have done at first, because I knew like nothing, and being like the only one who was an actual like computer science person in the company, like it was really over my head. But I tried my best, things went pretty well. And then came senior year, time to actually find a job. And then in the end, I was contacted actually by a recruiter on LinkedIn for Google. And so I believe that was around July, like right before senior year started. And so we were in communications. He asked, oh, what jobs are you interested in? And I was like, oh, software development, of course. And so we showed that they had like a front-end version, a back-end version, and then also the engineering residency program. And for me, I said, oh, that engineering residency thing sounds freaking awesome. Because if you're not, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially a 1-year program where you enter it for like the first 8 weeks. You spend just training on the Google tech stack and learning all the different technologies that we use. And then after that, you spend 2 like 20-week rotations on 2 separate teams. And then assuming, you're doing fine and you're working well, you end up actually being able to convert onto one of those 2 teams like permanently, or you could go ahead and find a 3rd team to convert by yourself. And for me, being someone who loved like getting to try out some different things, throughout college and trying different companies for internships, that sounded amazing. So we ended up going down that road, had some interviews, and somehow got the offer. And I was amazed. And of course, I applied to some other companies and stuff. And for a little bit, I was debating between Microsoft and Google, just because they're
That's a
both.
nice place to be.
Yeah, yeah. I felt so lucky. Like it was incredibly lucky and humbling getting both of those offers and being able to actually debate between those. And Microsoft was actually my dream company for like years. And so, but something in my gut said go with Google and do that engineering residency program because that sounds amazing. And so, in the end, I chose them. Then, of course, COVID hit. Spent the last semester struggling with that online version of everything, and thankfully graduated. And then a couple months later, started at Google, and here I am.
That's that's actually a really cool journey, and I think at least and towards the end, being contacted by a recruiter from Google, that's like something I think a lot of people dream of, and it's amazing that that happened. So to break that down a little bit, I want to sort of talk about some of the earlier internships as well. So you actually had an internship going into or in your sophomore year, which, like you pointed out, is kind of cool because mostly companies are looking for juniors and seniors. And so I want to ask, what do you think, or what do you maybe know, uh, was on your resume that made you sort of stand out for that company, for State Farm, I believe?
Yeah. I've honestly been thinking about that over the years because, of course, it's hard as a sophomore to get like any internship in the first place. And I think part of it at least was showing like your passion for CS, where companies know that as a sophomore, you don't really know some of the stuff that's really needed for like big like product projects. And so I feel like the fact that I had participated in like multiple hackathons and had also, I believe I was a math tutor like sophomore year as well. And I'm trying to think of anything else, but I think, yeah, to boil it down, having those projects from the hackathons, which I highly recommend putting on your resume, even if they're not like fully fleshed out, there's still something you worked on. And there's still something that showed that you cared about something that you put work in and that you actually know how to do CS. And so I think definitely having those projects and that passion for CS shown on the resume was definitely what really helped me stand out a bit.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because it definitely shows what you'd be like sort of to work with if you're showing that passion on your resume for CS. Um, like I said earlier, though, we are going to sort of now, well, push the questions to a slightly more narrow audience, and that's going to be, well, UofA students and people from other schools that are technically considered non-target schools, because uh, there is obviously a difference. And this interview series is sort of about, so we covered the general ground, like the sort of the general stuff that we talk about when talking about what lands you an internship. I think we are sort of now looking at questions about what do you think helped you stand out. Now we're going to your Google internship. What do you think, or maybe no, made that recruiter sort of contact you as a student from a non-target school?
That's a good question. I think part of it is now that since I was a senior at that point, part of it was sort of like that combination of having those projects on my resume from like hackathons and like other classes. Just as a side note, I've never worked on like a personal project myself, like outside of school or anything. They've all been either hackathon stuff or like from like a class, like for example, CSC 335 and that final project. Things like that were the only projects on my resume. And I feel like having those, and then of course the internships helped. And then having that experience of that, and then I was also a TA for like
Mhm.
some of the classes for computer science. And I feel like that showed off a lot of like the soft skills that you need for programming, and CS showing
Right.
that you know how to like explain about topics and help others understand what you're trying to communicate as well. Like I feel like soft skills are such a missed part that people often forget about for like
Mhm.
making your resume stand out and being competitive compared to other people. And I feel like definitely having that TA position and then the projects showing both like the logical side and then the soft skill, I guess you'd say hard skills and soft skills.
Mhm. Mhm.
And having both of those together was definitely what really helped me stand out a bit. I'm not too sure exactly why he was looking at UofA students in particular, probably just looking for people, but yeah.
Okay, that's yeah, no, that's really solid device. It is true that soft skills are, often overlooked as an essential part of what you should show on your resume because those really show how well you'd work on a team, and you don't program solo most of the time. You do work on teams, and I
Yeah.
think that that is a really important thing to showcase on your resume. Um, Going sort of on that line of what you said, you mentioned projects and you mentioned soft skills with your TA experience. Um, do you think there were any specific projects that made you stand out? And now that you're sort of working there and have worked at a bunch of companies, do you know that companies or maybe Google is looking for students to show that they know a certain paradigm of technology, say web development or machine learning, or are they looking for, have you used these languages kind of thing or these frameworks?
Yeah. So from what I know, pretty much all the basic, I say basic, but they're not, but all the basic things that you learn in college, like Java, Python, C, like that's about all you need. Because here at Google, we use all those things, and we even use like Go and JavaScript and things like that. And we don't really have a focus on having learned those technologies before or those languages before. Pretty much as long as you show that you know the fundamentals and know how to apply them, we're happy to have you. Like I know that, like for example, when I was figuring out what teams I wanted to have for my rotations, we had like an interest form, and we were able to like pick what languages we had experience in, and then also
Hmm.
languages we just had an interest in. And I
Oh.
know many fellow coworkers who like got placed on the team where they did not know the language. Like for example, right now, some of the people who got placed on the C++ team where they've never done that before, and they've done maybe like Java or something beforehand. And really, they're just spending some of the time to like just learn the language while they're working on the project. And so, in terms of what I had on my thing, I feel like I don't think there's really any specific project that stood out, as I believe most of them were Java based. And I guess that would probably show that I was proficient in Java, which definitely helps. But in the end, I think it was more of the topics that was covered in some of the projects. Like for example, with 335, I had the tower defense game, and
Hmm.
with that, it showed that I was able to work on like front end stuff using the UI with JavaFX, and then also back end stuff working with the enemy AIs and things like that, while also working on a team and then getting those mini sprints, I guess you would say, because those were like 1 week sprints,
Yep.
and having that overall broad package as a project.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And I definitely see where that's coming from because knowing a certain concept is much more important because you can, once you've programmed long enough, you sort of know how to translate that into your different programming languages. But you do need to actually know the, overarching concept. And so you said the 335 project is something you've already talked about. Were there other projects? What were some of the other projects that you sort of showcased on your resume that you thought would be a good way to showcase your skill and your experience?
Yeah, so I think I know. I had my hackathon projects where I'm trying to think. So first freshman year hackathon we won't talk about because that was trash. That was terrible. And honestly, what we didn't even really finish anything, but we still demoed like a basic little thing. But sophomore year, what was it? I think. Oh, while I'm talking, I'm gonna pull up my resume actually and
Oh, there
figure.
we go.
I know junior year, I believe that time I decided to try to go at it solo, just to sort
Mhm.
of see, like, and test my skills, I would say. And that point, I created a little Java FX application, and pretty much it was a project based on for people with like mental illnesses and stuff. They often have to take like medication and things like that. And so, where is this? By the end of that, okay, hold up. All right, I have the resume right here now. Let me pull this up
Awesome.
real quick. Okay. Let's pull that one up and then this one as well. Okay. So let's see. Work experience. Okay, that one's too old. All right, projects. So let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's what sophomore year was. So sophomore year hackathon, I had me and my friends, we wanted to build some sort of app together. And so we were brainstorming. We, of course, like everyone, we wanted to try out something with like virtual reality. And we tried to figure it out like that first
Mhm.
night. And we gave up on it. And so we pivoted and we were like, okay, let's make an Android app. Let's go ahead and figure out what sort of problem we could solve. And so we brainstormed and we thought about the fact that like kids and teenagers really, really hate chores. Just like probably I did and probably you did as well. And so we wanted to figure out a way for parents to manage them while incentivizing them for students. So we ended up making like this demo of an application where essentially parents could go ahead, post and assign tasks to their child's accounts. And then if the child completes it, they could mark it by like showing proof of like taking a picture or something like that. And they would earn like points. And
Oh,
so
that's cool.
the student could, then the parent could like set up like, purchases that they could make with those points. Like, I don't know, like $5 or like a new video game or a book or something like that. And then with that, then we were able to demo a really basic version of that. And it used mainly Java and Android Studio, I believe.
Mhm.
And in the end, we did end up focusing a bit too much on literally just the account creation, which thinking back to it now, that's definitely not what you should focus on, especially because you want to show the meat of the project. But
Mhm.
in the end, that ended up working out really well. And so, as well as that, I took computer security, I think at the beginning of senior year or junior year, I don't remember. But I believe, wait, no. It wasn't computer security. It was
Oh, it's a different
372
course.
programming paradigms. Yeah.
There we
Where,
go.
yeah, at the end of that, we had to choose a language and then build some sort of project with that. And so me and my friend, we were terrible and we chose x86 just
Oh
because
no.
I loved assembly and I was talking with him throughout the whole course, like, oh, we could choose x86 and make like Mario out of it. And like that's a lofty goal, of course, and we did not end up doing that. What we actually ended up doing was using x86 and utilizing like this one library called NASM and
Mhm.
ncurses, where it
Mhm.
has like text-based graphics, and we ended up
Mhm.
making kind of a Pac-Man clone, where like
Oh,
it was
that's cool.
like this little maze area, and like there was little coins you had to pick up, and there's like 8 of them around the map that you had to pick up to like beat the game. And meanwhile, there's like one enemy ghost dude who was like trying to chase you, and it actually worked really well, and it was so cool. And I feel like definitely something daunting like that definitely made my resume probably stand out a bit more, just because who the hell would do that in x86, honestly?
That sounds like that's an ambitious project. I don't I don't like writing in assembly. Um, it's always like can never see where anything is going. So it's like takes hours and hours to debug. But no, that's that's actually kind of insane that you guys did that.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
I can't believe in myself, honestly.
I can see that that's a project that would make you stand out. But okay. So now we have an idea of sort of what projects you did. Your sort of x86 Pac-Man, the 335 project, which you said tower defense game, um, and you mentioned one more, I believe, right? Which was the Android app for the chores. Did you say that was part of a hackathon project
Yeah.
in junior year? Okay, so diving into it just a little bit more, what skills do you think that showcased specifically in terms of new technology and well, technology concepts?
Yeah, so I think part of it was, of course, showing that I was able to learn a new technology quickly. Just because I had delved a little bit in Android development during like winter break, like right before the hackathon, and honestly, I didn't really do much. It was literally just, oh, click on this button, it brings up a new screen. And so the fact that we were able to build something in Android just over one weekend was insane because none of us knew Android at all. And so the fact that we were able to learn that technology really fast and quickly in the first place, of course, we weren't experts in it, but enough to build something at least, was definitely really great. And I feel like it definitely helped showcase our Java skills as well, just because we use Java instead of Kotlin, just because we knew that a bit more. And I'm trying to think what else. I think probably also, especially with mobile development, like if you aren't on like any other big team or anything and you're like us, you're working on just a small team or working by yourself, you're gonna have to develop both like the front end and the back end for it. Like develop how the UI will look and how exactly it interacts with the user themselves. And so I feel like especially with that Android app, it helps show that you can understand both ends of software development, no matter whether it's the front end or the back end, and you're able to utilize it and make it look good, kind of. Like, of course, we were not good in terms of design with like colors and everything, but it worked. And as a user, you could intuitively like figure out what to click on next. And so that was definitely another major thing that helped it really show what technologies and stuff really helped us in the end.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that's actually a great point that you bring up, where you're sort of showing that you know how to do both the front end and the back end, because when it comes to mobile development and even web development, where there's a lot of small things that connect, and you need to sort of know where they connect to figure out, hey, this bug in my .NET application is happening, on the C# code, not in the JavaScript code, that kind of stuff, and I think I definitely see how that's a super important skill to be able to have. Okay, so I think we're gonna pivot just a little bit and go back to sort of the more recruiting part of this whole process. Um, so so do you know if sort of most of the hiring happens through online applications, or if it happens through things like conferences and career fairs? Because I think all of us have heard this before, that your application gets lost uh, when you apply online, and so you really should try to be networking at career fairs, at conferences that come up, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so I'll say this. So people are definitely hired through like just online applications. But the fact that you're able to go to a career fair and network directly with the recruiter and stuff like greatly increases your chances because then they're able to see directly looking at your resume, seeing, oh, does this look good or not? And especially like I know like Microsoft at career fairs, they have like this special link that you can go to instead to apply. And they'll like fast track your application to be looked at, I believe, or probably. And so, yes, you can apply just online and get your application looked at, because I know actually I did apply for a Google internship both sophomore and junior year, and I believe for U of A they don't really ever show up for the career fairs, and so I did apply straight through just the online application, and was able to get like a phone interview and stuff at the beginning, which, if anything, that at least shows that applications don't just get lost online. We do take a look at them. We do try to pattern match them with like different skills and things like that. And I would say probably if you don't get a reply and stuff, that probably just means you just need to tweak your resume a bit to get those keywords in that need the matching and show off those skills a bit more. But I won't lie, definitely the career fair and the conferences, interacting and networking with someone definitely helps a lot, because at least here with Google, we do have an internal referral thing where we could refer someone, it'll send you guys an application, and then that'll immediately get like looked at, just because they trust the employees to make good judgments on, oh, who would be a good fit for the company and things like that. And so, if anything, I highly emphasize like actually like a recruiter or contacting them or something, and like whether that's online or in a career fair or in a conference, and building that personal connection. It means so much.
Hmm. Definitely. And so I'm glad you brought up referrals, because that's actually the next question. And I know it's usually a fairly sensitive topic, but what is sort of the right way to go about asking for a referral, especially when you're networking for the first time and you don't really have a personal connection with someone? How do you sort of build that, and how do you build that up to asking for a referral?
Yeah, so I know for me personally, I've never really reached out just because I've been scared to, because like, why would a random person care like at all? And so I'll speak from the other end of it, because now that I actually have like Google on my LinkedIn and my resume and things like that, I get tons of connection requests and things like that. And so for me personally, there's so many. And like right now on LinkedIn, I literally have like 500 plus connection requests just sitting there, just because partially I don't go on LinkedIn that much, and partially they're just that, just requests. Like for me, if you send like even just like a little note with it saying, hey, I noticed that you work at Google. I'm super interested in that. Would love some advice, or something simple like that. Like, I know at least for me personally, I'll be 100 times more likely to like accept that request and get to know you a bit more, just because it shows that you really care about it, instead of literally just sending a request saying, please accept my connection request or something like that. Like for me, if you show that like you do have that passion or that care for your future career, like hell yeah, I'm willing to help you. Like that's freaking awesome to see, at least for me. And I love to help people as well. And so in regards to that, to sum it up for the other side of people looking for referrals, if anything, always reach out. It won't hurt. Like if anything, they just won't get back to you. And try to leave like a note or something to try to make it a bit more personal. Like you don't want to look like just like some random bot just sending a request, right? You want to look like an actual human being, and that'll show that you care, you're passionate, and you want to achieve something in the future, whether that's getting a job or just forming some networks and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, and I think anybody who's watching this interview, and me as well, is it's reassuring to know that from the other side, um, that it's not as scary as it seems when you're on the applicant side of things, where you're like, exactly like you said, why would a random person help me? Um, so that's really reassuring to hear. Um, Now, let's sort of move on to I think that's the last segment. So it's about international students in specific. Um, so I was wondering if you knew anything about sort of the hiring practices related to international students, in the sense that uh, there's often a lot of uh, difficulty that international students face because of their visa requirements. which is that they do need visa sponsorship after they graduate. And I was wondering if you could maybe shed some light on how international applicants are, uh, filtered. Do you guys sort of give that a lot of weightage? Do you guys not? What sort of goes on there?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I'm not the most knowledgeable in it, but at least from what I've seen on the inside, seeing how there are some people working and stuff who are sort of international and stuff. Like, from what I know, as long as you hit those requirements of having the sponsorship or whatever, I'll admit I'm not the most knowledgeable in this topic, but as long as you hit those basic things, like, we won't judge you differently compared to other people. Like, I believe like all that stuff is just for like laws and government stuff, I think. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but like, at least for us, like, as long as you hit those, we'll look at you just like any other applicant. And yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. I think we have two more questions. I think one of them, or I think, we are actually on the last question. So I think we're going to end this out. And my last question is, do you have any other advice that you'd like to offer to anybody applying to internships? Like, is it like, don't be discouraged if you don't get anything in your freshman and sophomore year, or do something differently during your junior year, so on.
Yeah. So I would say plainly go out there and get it. Like, show off your passion that you care about CS, whether, like, I don't know, for me, I didn't really focus much on worrying about getting internships or anything freshman year, just because, I'm starting out. I don't really know that much. So I focused a lot more on my core classes and actually building those fundamentals that I could then build off of for later, where I communicated a lot with like the TA after like sections, and like talked a lot, asked questions about why this one practice problem worked or why it didn't, or sort of things I was struggling with. And that ended up helping me so much, like in the future, like years, where now that I built those fundamentals, I could go ahead, pursue that passion and that future career advancement a lot more, where now that I knew that, I could dive into some more creative things like hackathons, for example, and get to try out different things, whether they failed or succeeded, and just build that experience. Like, don't be afraid of potentially failing at it. Go out there and just try it. Like, you never know if maybe it'll succeed really well and it'll look great on your resume. Like, for example, like for that Pac-Man X86 game, we had no idea we were gonna finish it at all because it's a daunting thing. Like, it's hella daunting, and we only had a month to do it. And so in the beginning, it started off really well, and then things got tougher. And then by that last week, we were like putting in so many hours just trying to finish it, just because we really cared about the project and we wanted to make sure they looked nice and it succeeded. And so, I don't know, for me, at least from what I've noticed, show off your passion somehow, because if it shows that you care about CS and about what you're doing, it shows that you'll be a great person to work with because you won't like give up or like have a bad attitude towards things, which that's fine towards like, that's fine sometimes. Like, we're all human. But overall, having that passion and showing it off is, at least to me, is part of the reason why I feel like I was looked at, and definitely it will help so many people, because yeah, it's I don't know, it's just so important.
Okay, no, that's really good advice, and I mentioned it before. You can definitely see where that's coming from. That's super important in a professional environment where people should be able to rely on you. Um, but I think so. That was the last question for today. Thank you again for sitting down with me to have this interview. We are gonna, publish this to our YouTube channel for the Google DSE Club. so people can watch it. I'm sure a lot of people are going to find this super helpful. Uh, so once again, thank you so much for sitting down, uh, and I'll see you later.
Yeah, no problem. I'll see you later. Thanks, Adi.